Hey guys, Spacey here. Welcome to the Koura's podcast, Filmmaking Actually. Before we jump into this episode, part 2 of the full Names on the Wall panel with the key cast and crew, I want to give a quick heads up regarding the sound quality. We were all recorded remotely, and that comes with some technical hurdles, so we appreciate your understanding on that front, so enjoy.
Hi, my name is Koura. Welcome back to my podcast, Filmmaking Actually. If you missed the last episode, I recommend going back to that. For those ready for part 2, I present to you the second half of our full cast and crew panel for Names on the Wall at the NovaFest and Capitol Film Market. We will finish up the moderated discussion and end with our audience questions. Okay, here it is.
So we're going to get to the audience Q&As in just a little bit. I want to ask a question regarding the history of this. There's a lot of history at the beginning that I'm not sure if a lot of you are aware of. 2 presidents speaking. It's the Vietnam president at the time, and it's the United States president at the time. And then at the end of the movie, there's the Vietnam, what we call the Vietnam War Memorial, and then there's I believe what they call the American War Memorial in Vietnam. So can you guys, Koura and Spacey, I think you're the best to answer that, elaborate on that history? I mean, why you brought it in?
So something about the film just felt incomplete. I'll have Spacey talk about the 2 speeches that open. There's like that radio static in the beginning. That's actually really significant. I'll have him go over what that was. And then for me, it felt like, I mean, when it was done, like, obviously that's the whole point, is that when it's done, you're like, what just happened? Like, that was kind of, I think, where, if I can be so bold as to say, where I think Nick was kind of going with it in the first place, was it's supposed to leave the audience like, wait, what? And you don't know, is he going to go find the guy's wife and give her the locket? Is he going back to his unit? Is he going to go kill a bunch of people? Is he going to ever tell anyone what happened here? Like, you don't know. He just leaves. I kind of wanted to circle back to where we were going with it. And I forget where we came up with the idea of getting some footage. We had a friend in Washington, D.C. who went and actually filmed the footage for us. And it felt a little one-sided. And I was curious, so I just Googled, like, is there a Vietnam War Memorial in Vietnam? And that was when I found out that there is no Vietnam War Memorial in Vietnam, because there's an American War Memorial in Vietnam, the same way there's a Vietnam War Memorial in America. And that hit me as a human. If anything's going to kind of like level your playing field as like a perspective, it was to know that where you've got this, this is the Vietnam War. The other side is like, yeah, that's the American War. And I was like, wait, what? Spacey actually had the idea about, I think it was Spacey, about reaching out on Facebook. And I found somebody in Vietnam who
We found a lot of great people on Facebook.
Oh, gosh.
When it comes to the score, even, there's an erhu player who plays the haunting, like, it sounds like a violin, but it's very haunting. I found them, I went on to a Facebook group for erhu players. It was suggested by our composer that they wanted an erhu, and I had to find somebody who could do it. And it's like the world's foremost erhu player who lives in Japan, but they're from China. So it was like, this guy is like, oh, my teacher, she can do this. I'm like, okay. And then we found out all she wanted in compensation was IMDb credit. Which
was about all we had left in our budget. So that was good.
Did the title come first, or was it, I'm trying to remember, because Names on the Wall wasn't the original title.
No, it was 2 soldiers. Yeah.
It was 2 soldiers, which was just generic as U.S. Soldier number 1, U.S. Soldier number 2, and Viet Cong. I mean, the whole point of that was just to make them face, like, nameless, right?
I know.
In a way, like, this could be anybody.
I wanted to name them too, because their IMDb credit looks so janky, like U.S.
I know, but
and I'm like, but we can't name them.
Yeah.
No, and I get that, like, from like if there were extras, you'd be like, okay, whatever, but they're the main. But I mean, that was kind of the point, right? Just keep it like this could be anybody.
Yeah.
In a war, like, you put a name to it, then you just like you kind of like. You condense the story to like, oh, this is just their story. That's it. It was like, no, this probably happened a zillion times, or versions of this, or whatever. But the Names on the Wall, which was, I didn't even come up with that title, and we argued over whether there's going to be names on the wall or names on a wall, and I lost. I wanted a wall so bad, and then you were like, hey, we'll put it up to a public vote, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to win this, hands down, and then I lost. So
Names on the Wall.
Yeah, it's the game Names on the Wall, but I can't remember if that was like if that then spurred on like the War Memorial stuff at the end and everything, like it almost all came from that title. Then obviously the name of the song and the song itself and those. So it's like once we nailed down that title, it's like all these other like opportunities and themes kind of became recontextualized. We were able to do so much more in post.
Yeah. And we one of the things that I wanted was, especially because this was a short film, this was my first film, you know, like a lot of us were like, these were very early on projects for us. I didn't want to have like, you just saw our 20-minute film, here's 10 minutes of credits. So I wanted to focus on as much story as I could work into that. And so when we got the footage from Vietnam, which by the way is under armed guard, and the guy who shot it came back and told me, he was like, I got some shots, but I want to get some more. He goes, I just have to go back. He's like, I have to be careful because there's soldiers there and you're not allowed to have cameras. And I was like, do not mess with the Vietnamese military. Like, this movie is not worth it. Thank you. These shots are great. We're good. He
went back though.
He went back. And apparently the guy that was on guard that day was a big fan of American movies. And he basically looked the other way and was like, and like let him go in and get all these shots. And the thing that struck me the most when I was editing like that part is when you go to the American one, it's full of people. It's full of people touching the wall, leaving flowers, bowing their head, all of this stuff. And then when you look in the one in Vietnam, it's just empty. And like nobody even stops. Like it's just the traffic going by in front of it. And it made me wonder like how many Viet Cong soldiers had a story like ours and where did they go and like what happened. And it kind of like spun my head a little bit. Anyway, so that for me, those two things in the I'm seeing the side in the chat. Brendan, you're amazing. So just for the record. So literally like the fact that these guys were able to take that heart and bring it to stage, that was our argument, Nikki. Names on a wall, you don't know names on.
I wanted it to be ambiguous. Everything was supposed to be ambiguous. No, this is a years old argument. I'm still sore about it.
But you know what? We did it before Tenet. We have just nameless protagonists.
That's true.
Yeah.
Actually,
see, but yeah.
So then the radio part, I'll let Spacey share that part because I just talked a lot. Sorry.
Yeah, in the intro, there's like some radio static and there's some voices, and it's really difficult to maybe hear what they're saying. From a sound design choice, Koura was like wanted to kind of key up the eeriness or confusion of the, sort of a catastrophic sound of colliding
worlds.
Yeah, when worlds collide in a world. But I have the text here of what is actually being said. One is from Ho Chi Minh, who was the prime minister of Vietnam. And this was from 1945. He was quoting a very famous document. All men are created, this is a translation from Vietnamese. All men are created equal. They are endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And then
so who's saying this?
He's saying it in the Vietnamese. And then this is a quote from a speech by Richard Nixon, President Richard Nixon.
That guy.
Go on.
I'm just, Let us be united for peace. Let us also be united against defeat, because let us understand, North Vietnam cannot defeat or humiliate the United States. Only Americans can do that. So,
and that to me,
there's no editorial spin on this from me, just though that's what was being said.
I love that he had those two quotes, because the fact that the American president was saying like, only Americans can defeat Americans. And then the prime minister of Vietnam was quoting the very foundation of America in Vietnamese. I don't know. I was really excited when he brought me those two clips. It was like such a perfect, like, I was like, yes, I was like, that is how this movie is going to start.
That's the fun part of editing, isn't it? It's just discovering certain things.
Yeah. That was a long answer.
We've got some good audience questions. I got one more tiny thing. Before we jump there, what's the future of Space Dream Productions?
No.
Do you have anything to look forward to?
Space Dream Productions. Thank you. Space Dream Productions is really excited to be working on a couple of really awesome projects right now. We have our first entirely independently owned feature film, which is called Catching the Light, which we were able to safely shoot during COVID last year in September 2020. That is currently in post, and we're really excited to be sharing that with everybody soon. And we're working on, we had another feature called Comic Relief, which we were so excited about, and it was gearing up, and we have a fiscal sponsorship from the Utah Film Center, and we were all about to go, and then the world shut down. And we actually have that budget back with our line producer being restructured to include all of the COVID safety elements and all of the union requirements to move forward with that, because it's a little bit of a larger project than Catching the Light was. And then we have some other things that are even more in the works that I can't mention yet. But those are our kind of two biggest, is Catching the Light and Comic Relief. And you can follow both of them on social media.
Awesome. Let's jump into the audience. I think they're going to be excited for some of these questions. First one, I'm going to just kind of pick them as I see them. How did you approach shooting a film set in a vintage era while using modern digital technology and still keeping the look you wanted while taking advantage of modern tools? So I'm just an amazing production designer. No, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. Well, I mean, I was the production designer for it, but that sort of filmic look that kind of ended being the kind of finish on the film itself. First of all, we did have Nick, who is a research guru, and he was like constantly sending me pictures and links and things for all of their wardrobe. And we know it's not like exactly historically accurate, but we wanted to get it as close as possible. We wanted things to be nitty and gritty and real, so we tried to make that as authentic as possible. We tied their boots to the back of the Ranger's truck that drove it around the park. The guys were like,
we beat up everything.
We beat up everything.
Like the water canteens, everything. We just were like smashing.
We have to mention Park Ranger Larry.
Oh yeah, Park Ranger Larry was.
He was
awesome.
And then I have to admit, I tell this story all the time. Brendan, I don't know if you remember, but I walked up to you and I said, okay, so I would love for you to be like actually dirty. Are you comfortable just like straight rolling in the mud? And you were like, sure. And you literally laid down in a mud pile and just started rolling back and forth going, I love my job. I'm so glad I don't work a 9 to 5. I'm so glad I don't work in an office. This is amazing. I'm living the dream, as you were literally like rolling in the mud. And I like had so much respect for your dedication when you did that. I don't know if you remember doing that.
Of course. Yeah, you got to be in it to win it. I remember rolling around in the mud for like 30 seconds while everybody's laughing at me. I'm like, hey, this is what you got to do. And I remember standing up and you went, okay. And you're looking at my clothes and you went, I think it needs more. Can you roll around more? I'm like, sure. So I did it even more. And yeah, I just kept doing it till it was ready. But yeah, I do remember that.
It sold it. And this is the actual jacket that he was wearing. Spacey pulled it out of the closet.
It's never been cleaned.
It's been cleaned. We washed it. Unfortunately, I'm a little hot, so I'm not going to keep wearing it.
Yeah, you are.
But wow, inappropriate. So we're going to add into that. We were originally going to film. I saw a couple questions like, where are you filming and how long did you film for? We originally were going to film from sunrise to sunset on day 1 and then film for like a couple hours in the afternoon on day 2. I had just been in Utah at Sundance with Nick, actually, and my sunrise app was still set for Utah time. So when I set our call time, thinking, okay, good, the sun should be good and up by then, we'd already lost a couple hours of daylight. So I always say we did it in less than 1 day because we didn't get our full hours of daylight. And then what happened was Joan was like the trooper of all troopers. So we did all the action before lunch. Melissa just went in there. They had all the prep. They shot everything. And we shot everything. It was amazing. Melissa just like took that and ran with it. And it was perfect. Then when we came back, we were doing all of Brendan's scenes. And then we had to shoot that the ending, because we wanted the sun at a certain level. By the time that was done, the sun was setting. And we needed to get everything with Doan. And he literally powered through. I think we filmed with him for like an hour. Like everything, all of his shots, he was just like, boom, he didn't miss a line. He just went with it. And it was amazing. And unfortunately, it was a little while ago and camera technology did not quite meet what we needed. And the footage was very grainy. So my brilliant and talented husband had the idea of basically latching onto that grain and making this filmic effect that we then just put throughout the film. And it was one of these like happy accidents where something went wrong and we could have just been like, oh, this looks bad, or we could have tried to fight it, or we could have like tried to grade it in a way that didn't make it look, but instead kind of like everything that happened in the film, whenever something went wrong, we just kind of went with it. And, you know, we had to wait for a year. We waited for a year and it all worked out amazingly. Our location, the reason it worked was because it was, there was a really bad drought in LA. That was a riverbed. There is no pit. We were filming in a riverbed. And so anyway, the short version is, to answer that question, we had a really awesome creative team that really went for authenticity at every single layer. And then to put a kind of finishing ribbon on it was Spacey's final processing of the finished product.
Wow. It worked. So got another question here. While it definitely works and portrays the senselessness of conflict, were there any nerves going for such a gut punch?
I mean, I'll say this, and then I'll have Nick and anyone else who wants to speak about it. Nick and I, we argued about a couple things on this.
Only a couple.
It's a good thing you're married to my best friend. The blood spray in the end, I didn't want to be that graphic. And we went back and forth on that a lot. And Nick's an awesome person to collaborate with. He was definitely, you know, he was open to changes. And like when I was like picking the script apart and we're changing things, and he was like going with things. And if he ever put his foot down, I knew that it was because something about it like really meant something. So he really was like, we have to have that. It needs to be that graphic. It needs to be that sort of visceral. In the end, I was like, okay, fine. And we even beefed it up a little bit with some effects from a really awesome post-production effects guy named Alex. It was weird. The ending is what drew me to the story. The fact that it wasn't just like, we need to get along or we're going to die. Because that's kind of like, we know that. We're still not getting along with people. There's still, you know, racism and poverty and, you know, income discrepancies and sexism and misogyny and blah, blah, blah. But to hit it that hard, like when I saw that, I was like, that's it. Like that last scene was what grabbed me when I read it the first time. And I was like, this makes the point. And there's little nuances that I don't know if anybody notices, but like when Ian, US Soldier 2 is saying, we're your friends, huh? It cuts back to Brendan and he's processing this like, whoa. And Brendan looks down and you see that Doan's finger wasn't on the trigger. So when Doan had the gun up, he grabbed it out of reflex, but even with all of his training, he wasn't going to shoot. And it was all of those little things. So like, while for me anyway, the fact that it was so raw, that's what got me. And I was like, this is the story that I want to tell, is this exact ending. So Nick, I don't know what it was like for you, but that's how I felt. Yeah,
ditto. No, I remember we were like this close, to taking out that shot of Ian, because like technically, I guess per like physics or whatever, like his body doesn't react the way it would if a bullet was going through his head, and we're like, so like eventually it was just sort of like, well, this just tells the story, like this is what happens, and I think it's just interesting the way you guys even cut it, where you don't see Fuchs like actual like a gunshot, you hear it, so. And then you see his reaction. I think it's just, there's a million ways you could do anything. You can cut anything a million ways. You could tell a story a million ways. I just thought this is the way that story needed to be told. It was like, I don't know. Like we you know, it's a 25-minute runtime on this film.
Yeah.
And we were like, how do we basically make you care about these people? You know, that you're going to know for maybe 20 minutes of that runtime. Like you have to, and I think Brennan and Fook, they were really the ones that, I think, you know, it was on the page, but whatever, right? Like they brought it to life.
It's only like a 12 or 15 page script though, isn't it?
Yeah, it was the original one was 12 pages, and I think at the end we had like 15 pages or something like that.
Yeah.
But no, I mean they just brought it to life, you know. And Ian, you know, he was amazing because he's on it for like 20 seconds, if that. And you get I mean, in a short film you have, you know, limited real estate, and so you have to be able to kind of, you know, get the point across quickly, but you want it to feel organic and not feel like this forced shoehorned in, you know, chemistry or whatever, and they nailed it. Like, I think the actors just all killed it. So
I agree.
yeah.
Well, that kind of leads on to another audience question. And Nick, I'd love to hear it from you. What really made Fuke and Brendan stand out in their audition? Is there something?
I wasn't even involved in, you know, beyond, because those were all done in LA. I don't go to LA. Like, East Coast. Like, I went for the shoot at the end, but I mean, you know, Koura was sending me the audition. You know, I was looking at them, and she was like, "These are the ones." You know, I saw all the other ones, but she was like, "These are the ones that I think this is." You know, we had to agree on it, and I was like, "Yeah, they killed it." You know, and but then I met them, I guess, the day before the shoot, right? Because we went out there like the day before we blocked everything, and you know, I went and had to get the last bit of costumes and guns and the kind of jewelry. You know, didn't show up. You know, that locket, it was supposed to be a whole other thing. It's written differently in the script. I don't even remember exactly, but it's written differently, and the thing never arrived. And so, you know, you guys are shooting, and I'm driving around LA trying to find a place to get anything that actually looks good enough for the scene. And I go to this, I don't know if it was a Zales or somewhere, and I bought a, you know, $500 locket, and I was like, "Can I please return this tomorrow? I need this for like 2 minutes." And they were like, "I mean, yeah, just don't mess it up." And I was like, "All right, cool." So I brought it back and I handed it to Fuke, and I was like, "Please, this is on my American Express. This is not budgeted for. Just be careful." And he's like you can see he was like, the pressure. He's like, "I don't want this pressure. Can we just like, you know, cut this?" But
I think we
yeah,
have a picture of that moment actually in the behind the scenes where you're leaning forward and Doan is just like, He's like, I don't want that.
I stared through his soul and I was like, "I have to return this tomorrow. Please don't do this to me." And you know, somehow it didn't even end up getting dirty, even though like they're covered in filth. This is like towards the end of the day, and yeah, I was able to return it the next day. So I don't know what that had to do with anything, but yeah. So I met you guys the day before, and you know, I don't know, you guys had put in so much prep with Melissa and stunts, and you know, we went to the gym where you guys were doing that, and I was like, "God, they're putting in work." Like, you guys were just like on it, and you were, you know, very open and collaborative, and just good guys, you know. And I think that's first and foremost, you know, just kind of, I think it came through on the film because basically those two characters are good people.
All right. Well, I think we have time for another question. We'll throw it out. It's a lot of things directed to Koura. Big surprise here. Koura, what was the most challenging thing you had to do as a debut director? Main lesson, and what would you do different?
I always joke around when my friends are coming to panels, and I'm like, don't ask like what the hardest thing was, because it's such, you know, when I was picking the script, when I was casting the actors, when I was, you know, designing it, wandering around Malibu Creek State Park by myself, Snapchatting the guy that I was dating, or I don't think we were even dating yet, I had a crush on him, showing him pictures.
I think we were dating
We
at
were
the time.
dating with him?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we were.
And then,
Why would you Snapchat a guy you're not dating? Is that a thing?
and then
I don't use Snapchat anymore, so I don't know.
Like, probably the hardest part as a filmmaker ever is just not giving up. Every step of the way, I had the opportunity to not do it and be totally justified to quit. Like, nobody would be against you. If you gave up, everybody would understand. And for some of it never even crossed my mind. Like, looking back, I'm like, why did I put up with, like, what was wrong with me? But like, I mean, we had everything from like, okay, how do you get the budget for a story like this? How do you find the actors? You know, we went on LA casting, and I won the lottery when these two guys showed up. I happened to know Melissa from another project. Obviously, I knew Nick and I knew Mary. Everybody else on set, I'd never really actually worked with before. Cameron, I'd been in one of his films, and obviously I knew Spacey. But
can we give props to Kyle Jacobson?
I was just about to say, Kyle Jacobson, that was the first time I ever worked with him, and I have called him for every single project. And if anybody ever needs
sound.
Yep.
Yeah, he's amazing.
He's amazing, so professional. Just like every single person on set, it was an amazing day. Like everything, it was fun. Everybody was awesome. And when we hit post and we started hitting the post problems, like I couldn't let these people down. Like I had to finish it because I mean, Doan and Brendan were training for 4 weeks with Melissa, like a month of their lives learning this choreography. And anyway, I could go on and on. I know it's getting really late. I feel like people ask that question because they want to know what might they run into and how do they prepare for it. And I mean, Spacey and I have made about, I don't know, another 24 films since and projects, and you're never going to be prepared. You're never going to know everything that could go wrong. You're never going to, there is no answer to that question. And
there's always new hardest things.
There's always new hardest things. And the only thing I can tell you is just remember why you're doing it. And I know it sounds so like la la la, no. But that's kind of how I am. And I think if something really matters, the world and the universe is not just going to bend to your will. It's going to stand up and fight you back. And if you're not willing to fight it and keep going, there's always going to be something that's your greatest challenge. And I once read a quote in like a random magazine, and it was an actress, and she said that every time you do something you've never done before, now you're someone who can do that thing. And that really struck with me because it meant that it's true. The only difference between someone who does something and who's like, you know, oh, I've done that, and someone who hasn't is they've done it. So I can't stress that enough. Just go into it with that attitude of I've never done this before. And after I do it, I'll have done it. And that's it. So yeah, I don't know. I hope that answers the question.
I read a quote recently. It says, Spacey is one of my favorite people. That is all.
I did realize, though, I just want to make sure before we wrap up, we didn't get Stevie's answer to the question about her first moment on the set. And I wanted to make sure we had that opportunity for everybody to answer the question. Or on the project, I guess.
I was on set, but it's interesting because thinking about how it influences a person just watching it. When you're transcribing, you're fighting for accessibility. It's not just about translating the words and making sure the words are on the screen. It's making sure the sounds make sense. So like, you know how when you make a film, sound is such a big inclusion in the film itself. It's such a big part of it. It can change the whole story. So when you're matching something like that and providing for people who don't have sound, you have to be able to match what they see with what you hear so that the feeling is the same. So from every footstep to every heartbeat to every beat of the fight, everything has to make sense and really blend really well. And so I have to sit and watch it over and over and over and over. And I don't see it as it's being produced. So I don't see that. I kind of see more of the end or the close to the end result. And so having that experience, it's like I cry for like 3 days because I'm watching it constantly and watching every second and every blink and every move so that everything is perfectly matched up so that the accessibility for those who can't hear it are still able to get the same feelings, because it's not just accessibility, but it's about equity. It has to get the same feeling across, otherwise you're missing a whole giant audience of people. So it's really important. So it's just really, there was so much in this film that just got me, because I've transcribed things before, and it's a job, and I'm like, oh, that was a really good part, oh, I really like how it worked out. I've never sat and just cried for several days while trying to put it together and make sure it was perfect. I worked really hard on this to really try to make sure it was a really big fit, because it was such a good performance from Brendan and from Dawn and from really just everyone involved in this. You could see the importance that this film really has for everyone and how much they put into it. So it really just a great experience for me, even though it was later on for me than everybody else.
That's amazing. Thank you for your work on the project. So much goes into that. So I know I've held a lot of you guys for a long time. I'm going to give it up to the panel again. If there's any last comments that you guys want to say, any last thanks, now's the time, or forever hold your peace.
Forever hold our peace.
Last festival, last panel.
That's you.
Oh yeah.
And it's our first panel with everybody. We've never had a panel with everybody.
Ever.
No, now it's going to live on Prime Video, and that's it, right?
Yep. Oh, that's right. I should say that.
Yeah.
So you can tell all your friends if you love this movie. It is on Amazon Prime, even though Amazon said that they were shutting down their indie films. They weren't taking shorts. They weren't going to do it. Names on the Wall.
Like unsolicited submissions, they were stopping, but they accepted Names on the Wall. So you can go.
We made them an offer they couldn't refuse. A really good short film.
Congratulations, guys.
You know, I do want to bring up Robert Redhead. I'm not sure if he's still in here right now, but he did make a comment earlier. I don't know if you guys saw that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna read that to you guys if you didn't see it. He said, "I had my brother's friends lost in that war, and some from high school before me. They were Huey pilots. I had my draft ticket to go, but it was just over before I was to go. Thank you so much for this film. I hope you can have a follow-up on this film." And that's so powerful, isn't it? You know, when you make a film about any war, really, but in this one in particular, the Vietnam War, there's people that had real experiences, and it hits them so much. And the fact that Robert's saying, "Thank you so much for this film," and anybody else, you know, Koura, I'm sure you've heard multiple times, you know, "Thank you for this film. Thank you. This is, I was in the Vietnam War. I was there," you know? And, you know, just as an actor, like just tapping into that mindset of being in the Vietnam War was so incredibly terrifying. I remember playing gunshots and bombs going off, and just sounds of war, and how heightened your senses get. But your adrenaline that's released, all these soldiers that are out there, the adrenaline that's released only lasts so long, and then you have to keep on going. You have to stay at that level. So the fact that we made something like Robert's saying thank you for makes it all worth it for me. So, you know, Koura, Nick, Joan, Melissa, everybody, Mary, everybody, like, we did good.
Yeah, we caught lightning in a bottle, guys. You guys have rated amazing. Unbelievable.
My favorite is the audience. I mean, knowing that, like, it's one thing for us to be like, yeah, we love our movie because we made it. Knowing what it means to other people is what means the most to me, and knowing that it communicates to people and that it means something to them, and that it hopefully, at the end of the day, I hope it makes them stop and think about the way they look at other people and the assumptions they make about them. And it may be a Vietnam War film, but like it says in all of our press and everything, it's meant to be a story of humanity, and it's meant to kind of make us stop and maybe question the assumptions that we have and some of the preconceived notions or the things we're told to think about other people, as opposed to learning the humanity between us all.
Yeah,
my soapbox.
No,
my dad was
well said.
Yeah, my dad was able to see it. He passed away a couple of years ago, but he was able to see it, and he actually compared it to there's a science fiction movie called Enemy Mine, and they go to like Mars, you know, some foreign planet, and it's all about an Earthling who can't communicate with like a Martian or something. You know, it was cool to have my dad like give his input, and my dad served during the Korean conflict, so. It kind of meant a lot to me to have my dad say he liked something that I worked on. It was kind of one of the few times that he voiced that he actually was proud of me for something specific, you know. So it's what you said about the comment there just reminded me of that, and how this movie is kind of all tied up in my autobiography, like who I am. It's kind of like intertwined like forever. So thank you guys for being part of that.
Thanks to the audiences who come and sit through ridiculously long panels. let us pour our hearts out to you, and
just this team too. This team is amazing. I love you guys.
Yes, throughout this whole experience, it's been my pleasure. It's been the team's pleasure. Audience, thank you so much. Filmocracy, thank
Fernando.
you. Nova Film Festival, thank you. Mr. Fernando Mico, thank you, man. So I hope everybody gets home safe. Do not drink and drive. Make sure that
if you want to
make sure you guys enjoy the rest of your evening. All right.
As well.
Thank you guys.
Can we drink and log off?
You can drink and
Log off and then drink.
to the festival room.
Okay.
Can I take a photo? Can I take a screen grab of everything?
This was recorded.
Log off and drink.
Yeah. It was,
Yep.
So where do we go?
so you're welcome
was
to
recorded.
hang out on the floor.
Where's the
Instagram.
The after party is going to be back in the theme forum room at the
All right.
tables.
Let's go.
Okay.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Congratulations,
Love
guys.
y'all, guys.
Thank you.
And that's it. I hope it was useful to hear what it was like to make Names on the Wall from me and my team. If you have any additional questions not covered in our panels, again, you can reach out for film-specific questions on our film social media. Names on the Wall is on Facebook under Names on the Wall, and you can always email us here. Spacey will tell you. All right, that's it for now. Bye.
You've been listening to Filmmaking Actually with Koura Linda, the Space Dream Productions podcast. Subscribe to us on any or all the podcast platforms, but we especially recommend our sponsor, Anchor. If you like what you hear, leave us 5-star ratings and positive reviews on iTunes and Stitcher. It helps more listeners like you discover the show. But the best thing you can do if you really like the show is tell a friend. Want to leave a comment or ask a question? Email at filmmakingactually@gmail.com. This is Spacey speaking.
Thanks to the audiences who come and sit through ridiculously long panels and let us pour our hearts out to you.
And we'll see you next time.